Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopijana Balava Girivaradhari Gopijana Balava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hori Jayo Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hori Gopijana Balava Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Balava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Go Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Hara Shivashadi Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Rama Hare Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go Haribo. Back to home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo. Rama Hare Rama, nītā go Haribo, 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 go Haribo. Nītā go Haribo, 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 go Haribo. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Joy Nitya Lila Vishnu Vishubha Brahmam Subri Vraj Vicharya started the Rishishimad. In divine loving grace, Srila H.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya, BBT founder Acharya, savior of the whole world, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Lila Vishnu Vishubha Brahmam Subri Vraj Vicharya. Has started the Rishishimad, the divine grace, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Kodi Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Brahmji Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gokubinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Namadi Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Dev ki jai, Shrimati Tulsi Maharani ki jai, Ikadharma Harinam Sankirtan Yogi ki jai, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nītāḥ ki jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundar Lalita Vishaka ki jai, Shri Krishna Balaram Mandir ki jai, Sham Veda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories of some devotees, all glories of some devotees, all glories of some devotees, all glories of Lotus Feet, Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first of all offer respectful obeisance under the personality of Godhead Narayan, under Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, Srila Vyasadeva, the author, Mother Saraswati, goddess of learning, and who else? Srila Prabhupada, our translator, commentator, and dearmost spiritual master. Certainly, we would all be completely lost without him. So we're continuing with Srimad Bhagavatam. And we are in chapter 68 and text number 25. And let's see. Okay, I'm going to open my notes. So we're doing 25 to 37, right? Okay. And let's see here. So it's 25 is on the board here, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Ete, and this chapter is entitled Marriage of Shamba. Ete, excuse me. Yaunena, sambaddhāḥ, saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ, saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ, vṛṣṇayas, tulyatāṁ, nītā, asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ, ite yaunena sambaddhāḥ, saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ, vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ yaunena sambaddhāḥ saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ yaunena sambaddhāḥ saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ. Please chant. yaunena sambaddhāḥ saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ 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 yaunena sambaddhāḥ vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ yaunena sambaddhāḥ saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ. Anyone else? Go for it. yaunena sambaddhāḥ saha-śayyāsanāśanāḥ vṛṣṇayas tulyatāṁ nītā asmad-datta-nṛpāsanāḥ. Any other brave souls? Okay, word for word. Ete, these, yaunena, by marital relation, sambaddhāḥ, connected. Saha, sharing. Śayyā, beds. Asana, seats. Aśanāḥ, and meals. Vṛṣṇayas, the Vṛṣṇis. Tulyatāṁ, to equality. Nītāḥ, brought. Asmat, by us. Datta, given. nṛpa-āsanāḥ, whose thrones. Translation. It is because these Vṛṣṇis are bound to us by marital ties that we have granted them equality, allowing them to share our beds, seats, and meals. Indeed, it is we who have given them their royal thrones. Please repeat. It is because these Vṛṣṇis are bound to us by marital ties that we have granted them equality, allowing them to share our beds, seats, and meals. Indeed, it is we who have given them their royal thrones. Wow. So there's no purport, so we will continue. Okay. Now keep in mind, just in terms of context, Balaram, Lord Balaram, was standing on the altar with his arm on Krishna's shoulder, is commanding, because that's his position. He's the supreme commander. The Kurus to immediately give back, release Samba. And the Vṛṣṇis, as we can see, are not so inclined. We'll see what happens. So I'm just going to read the English because there's a number of verses. Hope nobody minds. Text 26. Only because we looked the other way could they enjoy the pair of yak-tail fans and the conch shell, white umbrella, throne, and royal bed. No longer should the yadus allow us, no longer should the yadus be allowed to use these royal symbols, which now cause trouble for those who gave them, like milk fed to poisonous snakes. Having prospered by our grace, these Yadavas have now lost all shame and are daring to command us. How would even Indra dare usurp anything that Bhishma, Drona, Arjuna, or the other Kurus have not given him? It would be like a lamb claiming the lion's kill. Sri Badarayani said, O best of the Bhartas, after the arrogant Kurus, thoroughly puffed up by the opulence of their high birth and relations, had spoken these harsh words to Lord Balaram, they turned and went back to their city. Can you imagine? They spoke these words, didn't even offer respects to Balaram, turned their back to him and walked back to the city. Seeing the bad character of the Kurus and hearing their nasty words, the infallible Lord Balaram became filled with rage. His countenance frightful to behold. He laughed repeatedly and spoke as follows. Lord Balaram said, clearly, the many passions of these scoundrels have made them so proud that they do not want peace. Then let them be pacified by physical punishment, as animals are with a stick. Only gradually was I able to calm the furious Yadus and Lord Krishna, who is also enraged. Desiring peace for these Kauravas, I came here. But they are so dull-headed, fond of quarrel, and mischievous by nature, that they have repeatedly disrespected me. Out of conceit, they dared to address me with harsh words. King Ugrasena, the lord of the Bhojas, Vṛṣṇis, and Andakas, is not fit to command when Indra and other planetary rulers obey his orders? That same Krishna who occupies a Sudharma assembly hall and for his enjoyment took the Parijata tree from the immortal demigods, that very Krishna is indeed not fit to sit on a royal throne? The goddess of fortune herself, ruler of the entire universe, worships his feet. And the master of the goddess of fortune does not deserve the paraphernalia of a mortal king. And this is text 37. This is the last text we're going to read. Lord Balaram continued, the dust of Krishna's lotus feet, which is a source of holiness for all places of pilgrimage, is worshipped by all the great demigods. The principal deities of all planets are engaged in his service, and they consider themselves most fortunate to take the dust of the lotus feet of Krishna on their crowns. Great demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, and even the goddess of fortune and I, are simply parts of his spiritual identity. And we also carefully carry that dust on our heads. And still, Krishna is not fit to use the royal insignia or even sit on the royal throne. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The above translation is based on Srila Prabhupada's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This obviously was not, purport was not written by Prabhupada, his devotees, PBT devotees wrote it. The above translation is based on Srila Prabhupada's Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the place of pilgrimage especially referred to here is the Ganges River. The Ganges water is inundating the entire world, and since it is emanating from Krishna's lotus feet, its banks have turned into great places of pilgrimage. Umagyan tamanandasya gananjana salakaya chakshurun militam jena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Uttaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivashakan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa sindhubhya eva cha Putitanam bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Shri Gaura Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak something. Although I am most unqualified, I beg for the mercy of all my senior godbrothers and devotees, and pray for your guidance as well as the guidance of all my spiritual masters And Srila Prabhupada, the previous acharyas, I pray that I may say something today that may be beneficial and enlivening for the devotees. So we are continuing hearing these amazing pastimes of Lord Balaram, Supreme Personality of Godhead. First, his pastime of killing Vivida gorilla, and then culminating with Lord Balaram's incomparable divine anger resulting in his digging out the entire city of Hastinapur and dragging it. Can you imagine dragging the entire city of Hastinapur with the intention of throwing it in the Ganges? Just in the nick of time, the Kurus were able to appease Lord Balaram. And that verse will be spoken in a few more verses. I find it interesting that in Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada explains that all these elders and exalted personalities of the Kuru dynasty, including Bhishma, Dronacharya, of course other, not so senior members, Dronacharya and others. It says that he knew that Lord Balaram was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? How quickly they forgot that. So this chapter is so instructive in so many ways. As Prabhupada mentions, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had said that, well, Prabhupada was talking about these Bhagavat Shabdas, these 7 days reading Srimad Bhagavatam that they have. He says 7 days, the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. He said, what to speak of 7 days? He says, Prabhupada said, you could recite one verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. In this particular instance, Prabhupada said 7 years. You could discuss it every day for 7 years. There's so much there in Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada explains how when Krishna was here 5,000 years ago, hardly anyone knew that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna was playing as an ordinary man. They knew he was a cowherd boy in some small village of Vrindavan, and that he was an intimate friend of the Pandavas and was executing even menial tasks for them. In the Rajasuya sacrifice, what was Krishna doing there? He was bathing the feet of all the guests, wasn't he? It's very difficult to understand who Krishna is. And it says that maybe 98, 99% of the population did not know 5,000 years ago Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pretty amazing. Oh. So it does seem almost inconceivable that all these elders of the Kuru dynasty, including Bhishma himself, would forget. Of course, this is pastime, and somebody had mentioned that, Srila Sridhar Swami had mentioned that deep inside, the Kurus actually wanted to experience this, the power of Lord Balaram. But I don't know, in terms of Leela, how conscious they were of that. So what lessons can we learn from this pastime? By witnessing Balaram, whose partial expansion as Anantasesha, fire emanating from his mouth, destroys the entire universes at the time of the universal cataclysm. And again, this same Balaram who is standing right here on the altar with his arm on Krishna's shoulder. So what verses in Bhagavad-Gita come to mind? There is one verse in Bhagavad-Gita, second chapter, Bhogaishvarya prashaktanam tayaparita chetasam vyavasyat nika buddhi samado navidiyate. That for those who are bewildered, attracted by material opulence, and are bewildered by it, the resolute determination of Krishna consciousness cannot take place. Another verse also comes to mind in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the prayers of Queen Kunti. And she says, Janmais jivarya shruta shribir idamana vada puman naivar hat yabidatvam vai Tvama kinchana gocharam. She says, my Lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to prove himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. So I thought we'd read the purport. When I give class, of course, I want to share whatever tiny realizations I have, but I also really like reading Srila Prabhupada's words, because I intuit that probably most of us don't read his books as much as we should. And we sing every day in the morning that our only desire is to have our consciousness purified by the words emanating from Prabhupada's lotus mouth. So we'll read the purport to this verse, which is very enlightening. Prabhupada says, being materially advanced means taking birth in an aristocratic family and possessing great wealth and education, attractive personal beauty. All material men are mad after possessing all these material opulences. And this is known as the advancement of material civilization. But the result is that by possessing all these material assets, one becomes artificially puffed up, intoxicated by such temporary possessions. Consequently, such materially puffed up persons are incapable of uttering the holy name of the Lord by addressing him feelingly, O Govinda, O Krishna. It is said in the Shastras that by once uttering the holy name of the Lord, the sinner gets rid of a quantity of sins that he is unable to commit. I'll repeat that. It's pretty significant. It says in the Shastras that by once uttering the holy name of the Lord, the sinner gets rid of a quality of sins that he is unable to commit. Such is the power of uttering the holy name of the Lord. Prabhupada continues, there is not the least exaggeration in this statement. Actually, the Lord's holy name has such powerful potency, but there's a quality to such utterances also. It depends on the quality of feeling. 3 times now, Prabhupada's mentioned feeling. A helpless man can feeling for A helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, where a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. A materially puffed up person may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the name in quality. Therefore, the four principles of material advancement, namely high parentage, good wealth, 3, high education, and 4, attractive beauty, are, so to speak, disqualifications for progress on the path of spiritual advancement. The material covering of the pure spirit soul is an external feature, as much as a fever is an external feature of the unhealthy body. The general process is to decrease the degree of the fever and not to aggravate it by maltreatment. Sometimes it is seen that spiritually advanced persons become materially impoverished. This is no discouragement. Sometimes it is seen that spiritually advanced persons become materially impoverished. This is no discouragement, Srila Prabhupada says. On the other hand, such impoverishment is a good sign, as much as a falling of temperature in a disease is a good sign. The principle of life should be to decrease the degree of material intoxication, which leads one to be more and more illusioned about the aim of life. Grossly illusioned persons are quite unfit. Grossly illusioned persons are quite unfit for entrance into the kingdom of God. In the Bhagavad-Gita, in the purport, Prabhupada says that by this process of Krishna consciousness, we are becoming qualified to experience the presence of the Lord in the sphere of our activity. It's interesting, I learned early on, gradually, in childhood, how everyone actually learns differently. Some people are more mind-centered. I think probably most people are. Other people are more, you would say, heart-centered, or learn things more with their feelings. I personally was very kinesthetic, they say, when I was growing up. And I would really only learn things from teachers that I felt like a strong heart connection with. And even if I wasn't so much interested in the subject, if I felt that, I could learn. So, Prabhupada talks about how the result that we're looking for in chanting the holy name, there's a quality of feeling in such utterances. And about 7 years ago, I had the incredible good fortune of being able to help manage 24-hour kirtan party here in Vrindavan. But at that time, it was a very difficult time for me, and I was very difficult just living in Vrindavan. And my realizations at that time were very, very paltry. But now that I've come back to Vrindavan, I'm having more and more realizations. And I met with the 24-hour kirtan devotees a few days ago, and mentioned how I really think that this service of chanting, hearing and chanting Harinam Sankirtan in association of devotees like that, in an intense atmosphere, like inside Krishna Balaram's temple, in the middle of Vrindavan, must be the most powerful spiritual activity on the whole planet. And Prabhupada says that we should learn gradually, that we should gradually start experiencing separation from Krishna. We're all separated from Krishna in this material world, and we're thinking of ourselves as separate. But Krishna is within everything. And when the intensity of our desire to have Krishna gets to a certain point, we will be able to start accessing Krishna through these deep emotions. And this process of chanting and the mood that Indra Prabhu developed in kirtan is incredibly powerful. And as I go into you can see the later years of my Krishna consciousness, I actually started coming down about 6-7 years ago with intense brain fog and chronic fatigue. And as we get older, our senses, we don't have the power of our senses that we had when we were young. And it can very easily lead to depression and different things. And but I started getting a dosage of fatigue and brain fog that was really special. And I was a little worried. My dad had died from Alzheimer's, so I actually did a whole search. I found out actually I have, it's called Lyme disease. It's some kind of a disease. And I started doing all these herbal formulas and things. But at the same time, I started increasing my chanting to chanting, instead of a couple hours of japa every day, 4 hours, then 6, then 8, then 10, sometimes 12 hours of japa. I was living in North Carolina at my brother's house, and he has an art gallery, so he would leave in the morning and I would stay in the house alone. His wife was in another place, and so I could chant. And after about a year and a half of doing that and observing, because I think that one of the most important aspects of Krishna consciousness, and something that is often not understood, it's important, is the process of introspection. Because it's one of the offenses against the holy name of the Lord, to chant without understanding what the purpose of our chanting is. It's an offense just to be inattentive. And what to speak of trying to understand. The purpose of what we're doing is not our whole life to be stuck in the process of just following rules and regulations and depending on those rules and regulations. Of course, even advanced self-realized devotees will follow many of the rules and regulations. But the goal of our life is to get to the point of spontaneous devotional service. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna says that dharmasya hyapavargyasya narto ritopakalpate dharmasya dharmaikantasya kamo, what's the last? Shrama eva. Yeah, that's another, okay. And then the other one, actually one I was looking for is dharma svanushita pungsha vishvakshena katasya not pariyadiratim shrama eva kevalam. That all the occupational activities that we perform according to caste divisions and orders of life. Now it doesn't say, Bhagavatam doesn't say that they're good, but we should, we could do a little better. No, it says shrama evi kevalam. It says they're actually a useless waste of time if they don't invoke attraction for hearing about Krishna. And so as conditioned souls, it's very difficult to sit down. I just spent 3 weeks in Govardhan with Vaishesika Prabhu. We were reading Srimad Bhagavatam 5 hours a day. And it's not an ordinary thing. I live in New Vrindavan, and one of my main duties there is I give tours and I help manage Prabhupada's palace. Some devotees say that I manage Prabhupada's palace, but I really consider that my main service is japa. And but in any case, I give many, many tours of Prabhupada's palace, and I have the incredible good fortune of being able to speak about Srila Prabhupada every day. And in the process of doing that, I've realized more and more how inconceivable it is what Srila Prabhupada actually executed in coming to the West. It is totally inconceivable. And what he did literary-wise also is completely inconceivable. And I wanted to just mention that because, as many of you know, Srila Prabhupada was seen in one of his rooms in Mayapur one time, sitting down reading one of his books. And a disciple came in and offered his respects and said, Prabhupada, I apologize for bothering you, but I have to ask you, Prabhupada, you wrote these books. I'm just curious, why are you sitting in your room reading one of the books you wrote? Prabhupada looked at the books, looked at the devotees. Prabhupada said, my books? Huh, I didn't write these books. Krishna wrote them. So just like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Srila Prabhupada was like a scribe, and Krishna was dictating to him. And as I, explain this to people, I've realized also more and more how incredibly inconceivable it was that what Prabhupada did. I'm sure scholars and historians to this day are still scratching their heads, trying to figure out how he was able to accomplish so much within 12 years. No money, no friends, no health, over 100 temples all over the world, 5,000 initiated disciples, and within 12 years, circling the globe 14 times in his mid to late 70s, when people like myself are already starting to get Alzheimer's. It's completely inconceivable. And, most people don't even understand what went into Prabhupada's purports. A lot of people, I'm sure, think that, Prabhupada thought, that's what Krishna wrote. Let's see, what should I write? Yeah, that makes sense. Let me do. Prabhupada would study the commentaries of 6 to 8 other Vaishnavacharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sridhar Swami, etc. And we would somehow memorize them, distill their essence, and then he would have to bring it up in a modern context. Now, Prabhupada said that his purports are his actual devotional ecstasies. And there's something that's called Vani, Prabhupada's Vani, Prabhupada's words, Prabhupada's instructions. My good friend Vaishesika Prabhu would often say that we don't read Prabhupada's books enough, and we should sit down and read Prabhupada's books for significant time every day, preferably in the association of devotees. Why? Yes, knowledge is important, but the primary reason is not for the knowledge. It's to get Srila Prabhupada's association. Because Srila Prabhupada is eternally present in his words. It is said in Shastra, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhavet Grayam Indriyai Seva Mukhe Jivado Svayam Eva Spara Yada, that no one can understand Krishna, his name, form, or activities through the materially blunt senses. Only when one becomes spiritually surcharged by hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, by Krishna's blessings, can one understand something about the name, fame, form, and activities of Krishna. Every time we sit down and read Srimad Bhagavatam, we sit down and read Srimad Bhagavatam in the form of Krishna book, for example. It's naturally pleasing to the ear to hear of these pastimes. But as I tell people, as I give tours in the palace and I'm trying to encourage them to buy one of Prabhupada's books, I tell them, when you sit down reading Krishna's pastimes with your children, this is not any ordinary activity. You're actually performing yoga. And not just any yoga, but the highest yoga. Because Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, yoginam api sarvesham, the greatest yogi is one who not is sitting up in the Himalayas meditating for hundreds of years in some cave, but the person who is meditating on Krishna within his heart, thinking how I can serve him. So time has slipped through my fingers, and I think it's time to stop. So I think we'll stop there. If anyone has any questions or comments or realizations they'd like to share, I'd really appreciate it.
Banabhatta Prabhu, it's the beginning of our book marathon. What is the significance of the Sankirtan book marathon? And are we supposed to just sit and chant Hare Krishna all the time? But sometimes people feel that we have so much work to do, how we can do that. And sometimes it's maybe frowned upon that prematurely if one sits around just chanting. If they're not ready for that, they may also get bewildered. Can you say something about the Sankirtan and also about just chanting and not going out on book distribution?
Sure. The first thing I'm going to do is mention a pastime I had with Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur in 1976. I became temple commander out of some necessity there. Our party, I was part of this party in Japan. We were collecting funds to help build Krishna Balaram Temple, Mayapur. And we went this year early to the festival in Mayapur. And as we were there, say about 3 months before the festival started, Srila Prabhu was already there. Jaivataka Maharaj came into our room, and something had happened to his temple commander. He needed a temple commander. So I became temple commander in Mayapur. And the incredible benefit is that Prabhupada was very concerned with these temples in Vrindavan and Mayapur especially, that as Westerners we could very easily screw up and it would look bad for the entire movement. And so Prabhupada, I had an open door policy with Prabhupada. I could go into his room anytime I wanted, because Prabhupada wanted to know every aspect of what was happening in the development. And this was 1976, and we were building the rooms in the wall that borders Bhaktisiddhanta Road and our property there. And we were behind schedule. And there were some devotees coming early before the festival. And so I was asking every devotee who came early, if just even for an hour a day, because we didn't know if we were going to finish the rooms. There were more devotees coming that year than ever before. I was asking devotees if they could maybe spend an hour helping do a little construction, and then the rest of the day is theirs. And I remember there was this one devotee, strong-bodied devotee from America, and he wouldn't do any active service. He would take a little breakfast, he'd go into the banana patch, and he would just chant all day long. So I was very passionate in those days, and it really got under my skin. I couldn't take it. So I went to Srila Prabhupada. I came into his room, offered my full obeisances. I sat up, and my first thought in my mind, Prabhupada was chanting japa. And I came in over here, was where the door is. Prabhupada was sitting behind his desk, which as he often did, he had his arm on his knee chanting, his face looking out into Goloka Vrindavan. And my first thought is, as I looked at Prabhupada, is, I should not be in here. I'm disturbing my spiritual master. But I was already in there, so I waited what seemed like an eternity for Prabhupada to stop chanting. And then he just cocked his head a little bit, didn't even, look straight towards me. And he looked at me, he said, yes. I was very nervous. In those days, I was very shy. I said, well, Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry to bother you, but I said, yes. Prabhupada, you know, we're trying to finish these rooms on the wall. There's more devotees coming this year than ever before. We're behind schedule. I'm asking every devotee that are coming to the festival if they could just do a little bit of service, even just an hour a day, because we don't know if we're going to be able to finish the rooms. We'll have no place for devotees to stay. There's this one strong body devotee from America. He won't do any service. He just sits out in the banana patch and chants Hare Krishna all day. Prabhupada heard what he said, went back to his chanting. And what seemed, again, like an eternity, probably so I would think about what my very passionate mind just asked, question I just asked Srila Prabhupada. So what seemed like an eternity, Prabhupada stopped. He looked towards me. Prabhupada said, so, you think chanting Hare Krishna is not service? He says, that is the greatest service. And you ever seen this picture where Prabhupada's eyes get really big? It was like that. And Prabhupada went back to his chanting, Hare Krishna. I'm like, Jai Srila Prabhupada. My false ego went from this to like this. Offered my full obeisance. I said, Jai Srila Prabhupada. I got the best instruction I've ever gotten from my whole life. Now, Srila Prabhupada was Trikalagya. Many devotees can attest to this. He knew everything we were thinking. Another devotee in the exact same situation, Prabhupada could have given a completely different answer. Prabhupada knew that's what I needed to hear. So back to your question, Panchagoda. I love what Indra said. Indra said that the best book distributor is the Bhajananandi, who also goes out and distributes books. That's the best book distributor. So, you know, we shouldn't think that, you know, and devotees thought this when they were a little puffed up, when Prabhu was on the planet. They thought, I'm doing book distribution. I'm like book distributor. You know, Prabhupada loves book distribution. I'm doing the highest service. And, you know, that tendency made them, actually made Prabhupada tell the devotees, I think it was 76 when they came to Mayapur. He said, Prabhupada said, oh, by the way, these books, yeah, they're not just for distributing. You have to read these books. And, you know, we neglected that a lot in the early days. And so, you know, book distribution is incredibly important. And of course, it is important, and Prabhupada talked about it so much. But again, it shouldn't happen at the, you know, with the result of not chanting at least 16 really good, sincere rounds. That is the essence of everything. And if we chant good rounds, then everything will, you know, because all the questions. Well, and Prabhupada invented something called Ishtagosi. And he would have devotees come together and read his books. And in the light of that, there are different things would come up. And in the light of you know, just being in the middle of reading Prabhupada's books, that we would, you know, discuss things. And a lot of these problems that we're going through and problems in the mind, everything, in the light of Prabhupada's books can be answered, and the light of the association with devotees. Anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Perfectly, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Reading by oneself, what's the difference between reading by oneself, reading association of other devotees, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. The question was, what about reading by oneself? Well, I live in a very remote place in New Vrindavan, and I've asked a number of God brothers if they would like to sit together and read, and nobody's interested. So I always read out loud when I'm reading by myself. And And so I would suggest that if you are in the position, I think it's definitely better reading in the association of devotees, but if you have to read by yourself, then read by yourself, but out loud, because you'll just absorb more by reading out loud. Yes, Prabhuji.
You spoke about a lot of things. You spoke about how inconceivable Srila Prabhupada was, his contribution pretty much to society. And you spoke about the process of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting. But you didn't, you said that we should be internalize our Krishna consciousness. And that really resonated with me. And it appears to me to some extent that it has to be given, that we can hear and chant and try to be sincere, but at a certain point, it appears to me that to make that crossover from becoming becoming devotees who are trying to learn, and that in order to become internal, that has to be given to us by Krishna. I want you to explain that.
Yeah, that's a great question. The devotee asked the question that in this process, internal process of Krishna consciousness, doesn't that have to be given by Krishna? It has to be given by Krishna, but as we just read, Srila Prabhupada says, because Krishna himself says, Yayatamam prapajyante tam tathaiva vijamyaham. Mama manuvartante manusya partha sabha. He says, as you surrender to me, then I'm going to award you accordingly. Now, at least in my own practice, because all of us are individuals, everything has to be given by Krishna. But also the enthusiasm we have, that's also given by Krishna. The energy we have, the intelligence to use our enthusiasm. In the Bhagavatam, in the purport, Prabhupada talks about something he calls sincere earnestness. He said that sincere earnestness must be there. That quality in our chanting must be there. There is a whole, as the Prabhu explained, the internal world is everything. Depending on that internal world, that's how we're looking out through these eyes at the external world. And the more we become internalized, one day we will open our eyes and it will be Krishna looking through these eyes. It will be Krishna. Krishna will take over this body. What are we doing in the process of our sadhana bhakti? We're actually in the process of reclaiming our original spiritual form. And in that form, our spiritual mind, our spiritual intelligence is already there and is becoming purified. So it's given by Krishna, but how is it given by Krishna? Personally, I don't know. And there is I found a verse where Prabhupada says, in this process of surrender to Krishna, we have to use 100%, practically 100%, of Krishna's strength and not any of our own strength. And however, we have these weaknesses of heart. And our strength lies in the ability to be able to acknowledge these weaknesses and to be able to have the inner strength. And the only way we get that is to pray for it, to be able to go into these places, and then with Krishna's strength, with that prayerful mood, to extract these things. This is explained, I won't go into it too much because it's late, but in the Bhagavad-Gita, in the last verse in the 15th chapter, Prabhupada talks about how these two main weaknesses, the first one being our desire to exploit the resources of this material world. And then as we, exploit this world for our own separate enjoyment, then we become very attached to all material possessions. Now, these are very, very deep, attachments and are difficult to get rid of. But, we have to realize Krishna's presence, first of all. Krishna is there. There's a song by John Lennon. I always mention this because it's wonderful lyrics. He says, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And I've noticed as I start chanting more and more and more, I don't want to move. Sometimes in New Vrindavan, I help manage Prabhupada Palace. I go to Mangalarti at the palace practically every day, but it's extremely difficult. I have to pry myself up from my japa to go there. And many, some days I don't make it. I'll just sit and chant japa. And I'll chant for 8, 9 hours just in one spot. It's not that I have some incredible taste. It's, even at this stage, it's a complete battleground, for me anyway. But, and incidentally, all these symptoms that I experienced from the quote-unquote dis-ease that I have, I've also realized that it's easy to fall into this kind of trap and think, well, I have this disease, or I have this disease. And yeah, they're heavy diseases, Alzheimer and all these things. But Prabhupada talks about how when he was a boy, there was a cholera epidemic in Calcutta. And Harinam parties were sent all over the city. They wiped out the cholera epidemic. And I realized there is only one disease, as Srila Prabhupada mentions. It's the material disease. And my experience is that when I chant, everything starts, symptoms of disease, whatever it is, gradually. We do enough chanting, it'll clear up. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough. I hope that at least helped answer your question. I think it's time for Prashana. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.